Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Inept General bringing you some Total War Warhammer 2 news, and today we got a huge information drop on the upcoming DLC, The Prophet and the Warlock. Now, in many ways, it's what a lot of the people in the Total War Warhammer 2 community have been expecting, but it's still great to get confirmation of all of the information. So I figured I'd go through all of it between the trailer, the Steam page, and the FAQ that was published earlier today, just to see what we're likely to be getting in this upcoming DLC pack. Now, we also got a huge amount of information on stuff that will be coming as free DLC when this pack drops on the 17th of April. Now, there was so much that I think I have to fold it out to a different video. We've got stuff on the new mechanics for an Under Empire. We've got stuff on tracking down Lord Croak as an immortal hero, so he's not going to be the free legendary lord with the DLC. We know that for a fact. He's going to be a hero that's campaign focused, so you'll have that to look forward to, and we've got some stuff on what Bretonnia have to look forward to as well in the DLC, but there's so much information on that different stuff that I'm going to do that into a separate video, so look out for that one coming out soon. But in this, we're just going to focus on the upcoming DLC stuff just in that pack, not with the free DLC stuff coming at the same time. So to begin with, I'm going to split the sections into a Skaven and Lizardmen section. Do check the comments down below for a time skip if you want to jump to one section or the other, but we will be starting with the Skaven, and the legendary lord, as we pretty much got confirmed yesterday, turns out to be Ikit Claw of Clan Skryre, the technological focused clan of the Skaven Under Empire, the character that leads the factions that had the most iconic missing units. So a little bit predictable there. A lot of people will be a bit upset that we didn't get Thanquol, but we could kind of see Ikit Claw coming from a certain degree. Ikit Claw, looking at his faction and some of the units and campaign mechanics, we're going to start with what we're all here for. Let's delve straight into the units that the Mad Tinkerer is going to get. First off, we see Rattling Gunners here who do fire massive miniguns into crowds of unsuspecting enemies. As we saw in the trailer, they made quite the impression. Just random fire, capable of doing huge amounts of damage in the right circumstances. So I think those guys are a great addition to the Skaven army. Next, we have the hugely iconic Warlock Jezzails, the snipers of the Skaven faction. Probably going to end up being used as Lord Killers in Total War Warhammer 2. Huge amount of range these guys should have. So those are the Warlock Jezzails. And last but by no means least, they weren't going to make them all missile-focused units in Clan Skryre, and so we have the Doom Flayers. Just metal balls of death crashing around the battlefield, causing as much damage as they possibly can. Really filling a bit of a niche there for the Skaven, as they're a bit short on cavalry or cavalry equivalents, and these guys might help out with that quite a bit. So all in all, happy with the basic units we got added to the Skaven faction. Can't wait to see them on the battlefield. Now, moving on, we're going to take a look at the regiments of renown for the Skaven faction. And so up first, we see that it is Ikit's Zap Zap, which is a great name for a warp lightning cannon. Now, it seems that this artillery piece has the Zap ability, which means that it will increase a target's ability cooldown times. Now, if you're quite good on your micro and you target the right potential legendary lords, cutting them off and extending their power ability cooldown time, switching target to target to target, could be a hugely effective way of really reducing an army's potential viability. So I think that is one of the good ways that one could proceed in the use of the Zap Zap. Next, we are looking at the Clan Vulcan Tail Slashers. Now, these guys are basically clan rats with shields who have flame attacks and maybe a slightly improved weapon strength as well, and they're immune to flame weapon damage themselves. So, just rats who like to be on fire, having a whale of a time amongst themselves. Next up, we have Blight Scab's Plague Pack. Now, these are a bunch of Plague Monk bearers with sensors. They have the Demagoguery ability, which seems to be able to allow them to give immune to psychology to all nearby units. So really good for holding the line in a Skaven army. So that would be a great one to see, and a hugely useful unit as well to have in the Skaven army. The Teeth Breakers are up next, and they are a rattling gun, one of the U units in the game. And the ideal with these guys is they have concealment bombs, which means that they can, I think it would have to be temporarily if their bombs grants them stock and unstoppable, which is a great bonus to get just to sneak them around, really move them into the most optimal positions for a rattling weapons team. The Council Guard, Storm Vermin with halberds. Now these one would hope would be Albino Guard, or at least the equivalent of. So hopefully they'll be white when we see them in Total War Warhammer. We may have seen them in an image somewhere that I haven't quite managed to dig up yet, but hopefully, fingers crossed, that's what they'll be. And they're drilled in the protection of their masters, they're unbreakable, and they have the Guardian ability, which adds to, I believe it was the physical resistance of any heroes within a potential radius of them. We've seen that ability before in other armies of the game. So moving on from then, we have the Regiment of Renown for the Warlock Jezzails, and that is the ultimate sniper crew, Natty Bubo's sharpshooters, and they have Stalk and Snipe. Now, a unit of Warlock Jezzails with Snipe is actually incredible. They can be invisible, and because they have such huge range, you could almost put them anywhere, and they could start to just whittle down an enemy lord or an enemy monster. A hugely useful unit. In fact, maybe a little bit OP, depending on how big a range they give to the Warlock Jezzails. Next, we have the Dwarfing Menace. I love a Doomflayer that's able to slash through Darwi armor. So they have Sunder armor effect, really just nullifying armor effects for a certain radius around them. Great use of the Doomflayers. And the Wheels of Doom. These have extra powerful missile damage for the Wheels of Doom and a discourage effect, making them able to run away quicker. So those are the regiments of renown for this game, and a bunch of hugely useful ones. No hugely apparent duds there, really. I mean, the flaming one's probably the least impressive of them all, but all could be hugely potentially useful in multiplayer and in the campaign itself. So a good list there, really happy with that one. The DLC is also coming with a new lord, and that is the Warlock Master. You know, not the new character or hero we necessarily expected, but just the idea of moving Warlock up to the general status and maybe giving them all the bonuses to match that, including bonuses for the new units, the Doomflayers, the Doom Wheels, the weapons teams, etc. So, you know, nothing that is that amazing, but a good extra unit to have as far as general options go. Now, moving on from the units themselves, let's have a look at some of the campaign mechanics. Now, in the blurb about Ikit Claw, we discovered that he is actually going to be starting at the Star Tower, which means that Teclis is probably going to end up having to move. If I got to pick, I'd like to see Teclis maybe move to Albion. Maybe they change the way that region's structured and move him up there. A bit easier for him to get to the Empire and the places he's known for being, and back home to Ulthuan as well. But we'll have to wait and see. I think that's where the Star Tower is, but we'll have to wait on confirmation as to what happens to Teclis if Ikit Claw is being moved down to the Star Tower. So look out for that bit of information to drop later on. Now, the next bit is the different mechanics that Ikit Claw's faction will have introduced. The first of these is the idea of him having the Forbidden Workshop. This is maybe an idea of Ikit Claw going down beneath Skaven Blight and creating a whole bunch of new Clan Scryer forges to make the weaponry that the Skaven are known for having today. But what this looks like is an ability to upgrade various units like the Doom Wheels, the Doom Flayers, the weapons teams with powerful new stat boosts and attributes, and it looks like those will be permanent. Now, I have to imagine this plays a lot like in previous Total Wars where you're able to get armor and weapon upgrades, and those units in particular would carry those upgrades throughout the rest of the campaign when you got a good blacksmith or whatever you ended up having to build. I imagine it'll look something like that. So that's a cool little addition there for the Forbidden Workshop for him to have. But in addition to this, it looks like further aspects of it will be able to build out, and you're able to do a certain amount of gathering of warp fuel and gathering of food to pull off upgrades to the workshop that allow you to unlock further things like specific regiments of renown unique to his faction. Now, these regiments of renown are unlikely to be able to be used in the multiplayer campaign, much like the specific regiments of renown for the Tomb Kings. Not all of them were able to be used in multiplayer, so it's more of a campaign one. Maybe guys are a little bit OP in these ones, but that's the way it looks like that this workshop will function. And you're also able to build the Doom Rockets there, which are a weapon ability we'll get into in a little bit. But basically, those are the mushroom clouds we've been seeing in the trailer and in the advert for the Archeon, the Ever-Chosen Invitational competition happening this weekend. So it looks like that's what those are. You can only use one per battle, but you can build multiple of them at your base or in the workshop itself. So looking at the regiments of renown you can get by going through the stages of this Forbidden Workshop. We have Warpfire's Wheel, a Doom Wheel with an improved melee stat and regeneration, which is fantastic for a Doom Wheel. We have the Black Hole Flayers, which are Doom Flayers, which have improved melee stat and cause fear. Not terribly adventurous there, but good fun to have. You have the Doom Bringers, a Warp Fire Thrower team with increased melee stat. They can hang on a bit more if they happen to get ambushed. They have Unbreakable, which is handy, but a bit of a tar pit, but I'm not sure why you'd throw away a Warp Fire Thrower team like that. So a bit of a bizarre one there, but useful nonetheless. And the Eye Takers, Warplock Giselles with a good sense of aim, and these do increased damage and they blind their enemies, the idea that they're shooting them in the eyes. So we've seen the blind effect in the game before, so that will be added to them. They also have improved melee attack and melee defense, a bit better if they do get trapped. The Death Dealers, a rattling gun weapons team. Now these fire a little bit longer range, that's a good addition. That's something I can get behind. And with reduced reload time. So all around, bit handy. Maybe not as good as some of the units we saw in the regular Regiment of Renown, which was a bit odd, but fun nonetheless. And I think probably the best one of the bunch are those Death Dealers, the rattling gun weapon team. So we have that to look forward to. Now, as I mentioned, there was also the aspect of you being able to build and stockpile Doom Rockets with the Forbidden Workshop. And it suggested that these might be the most powerful weapon in the game. Now, that is a lot to say. There's some things that can be absolutely devastating, including sort of spells like Banish and stuff like that. So I think if this rocket hits, it will be just devastating to an army, and I'm not looking forward to the AI getting a hand on it, but I look forward to using it myself on some unsuspecting Dawi. But yeah, great little weapon, a fun little aspect to have, kind of bringing the Doomsphere ability to the battlefield itself, rather than just being a campaign mechanic. So talking of the Doomsphere, we can see that the Doomsphere is a weapon that you can build in the now established Under Empire, which we'll get into a bit more detail in the free DLC video I'll do a little bit later. But this one looks to steal kind of a bit of the mechanics from the Vampire Coast DLC and expand upon that to establish the idea of an Under Empire where if you conquer a city or use a particular hero, you can establish a city underneath a city in the campaign of Total War Warhammer 2, and there you can build up a number of buildings and structures, including the Doomsphere, which will allow you to annihilate the city above the surface while maintaining your Under Empire, one has to think, or maybe that blows up as well. So you're just blowing up the whole settlement, just taking it out. Now imagine doing this to a faction's capital late on in the game when it's built up all the way, just absolutely potentially devastating, and a cool little mechanic taking a story element from Ikit Claw and really expanding it out. Now, it's not quite as devastating as putting it in a fault line and destroying all the Dwarven Carracks in one go, but you know what, when you can build a Doomsphere and just take out a city, that's pretty good fun as well. And so that's about it for the Skaven. So moving on to the Lizardmen, the legendary lord we have long been expecting. Tehenuin, the Prophet of Sotek, has made an appearance in Total War Warhammer 2, and I can't wait to get my hands on him. So let's look at some of the mechanics that are coming along with the great prophet himself. Now, starting off, again, as we did with the Skaven, let's take a look at the units first. Now, leading off the list is a bit of a surprise for me, but a lot of people made the shout. I thought this was going to be a regiment of renown rather than just an added full unit that everyone can recruit, and that is the red-crested skinks. Armed with great weapons, these are skinks who deal armor-piercing damage and can move at some good speed. So a handy unit to have, particularly when chasing down stuff like dwarf crossbowmen, which even if you caught with a bunch of skinks, you'd actually be kind of hard-pressed to actually beat. But these guys look like they might actually be able to be of use in that area as far as a red-crested skinks. So a useful one, but not necessarily like, it's not grabbing your imagination or anything like that, really, is it? So the red-crested skinks are in there. We also have the salamanders, of course, the most iconic unit of the lizardmen that we were missing. Fire-breathing. Now, in the description, it says they hurl fireballs. Now, I'm hoping that's not fireballs as in the magic. I was imagining more of a warp fire throw Drake scenario. Where Iron Drake scenario, when I say Drake scenario is what I mean, where they just sprout out like rivers of fire as opposed to single fireballs. But we'll have to wait and see what that looks like a bit in game. And they cause fear, of course, and they're very quick, so they can reposition very well. But that fireball gives me a bit of hesitation in terms of how it's implemented in Total War Warhammer. Next up, we see, I think I may have commented in the trailer, but there seemed to be a salamander that was bigger than the rest, and this seems like the ancient salamander, a sort of big salamander, hurls a huge fireball, deals high damage, and makes the target more vulnerable to flame attacks. So you'd maybe want a huge one of these boys rocking around with your regular salamanders at the same time, just to really make the maximum use of your salamanders. So an interesting go. But again, that's kind of recycling the model of the salamander, upscaling it and making it a single unit. So I'm a bit skeptical about that whole thing when we could have had Razordons or even the Troglodon in that area, which would have been a little bit better as far as buffing out this list. Ripidactyls, great addition. You needed them. Anti-infantry cavalry ridden by skinks, a powerful melee fighter in the air. They needed it. It was a gap in the army and was lovely filled, and great to have that on the go. Someone that can actually hold their own in the air as opposed to just the Pterodon riders. Ancient Stegodon with Engine of the Gods. We saw that in the trailer, summoning down a huge beam of light to strike down all its enemies. A great unit there. And we of course saw the Bastildan Ark of Sotek running through in the trailer as well. This is just summoning an endless swarm of poison attacks, and it looks like the way they translated it, it's going to be a vortex attack that this Bastiladon has, raining down, sort of having serpents come up from the ground and just do poison dealing damage to those caught in the vortex that it summons. All in all, I'm happy with it. My one criticism is I'm not as happy with it as perhaps I would be maybe I had another unit. I could maybe have done without the red-crested skinks and without the ancient salamander, and instead had the Razordon and the Troglodon in there as options. That would maybe have been a little bit better in my opinion, but overall, happy to see them. The salamanders have come in, the Ripidactyls have come in. Those were the ones that we definitely thought would make an appearance for sure, so it's great to see them turning up. We also got a new general with the Lizardmen, and that is the red-crested skink chief. Now, I think an Oracle would have been much better here. That's probably my biggest gripe in the whole DLC, is that we have a melee-focused skink chief. Great. Can ride a horned one or a Ripidactyl and ride an ancient Stegodon. What does he offer that the normal skink chief doesn't, except that he can lead an army? And, if you're going for the theme of the all-skink army, good for you. But an Oracle could have done that as well, and would have allowed you a bit more, difference. I get that it matches up with the Prophet of Sotek, but a little bit disappointing in my view as far as Lords in general goes, the red-crested skink. Maybe a bit too much to ask, but I think the Oracle would have been a much more interesting choice. Also skink-focused, and would have been a kind of a fun thing to do, but maybe they're saving that for a Teto Echo DLC down the line or something like that. But I just think maybe a slightly uninspired choice here from Creative Assembly. Moving on, let's take a look at the regiments of renown we're going to get in the Lizardmen army. We have the Thunderous One, an ancient Stegodon armed with the Judgment of Zakmak. This calls down bolts of lightning to strike down enemies engaging it in melee combat. That could be really cool. I'm not sure what that exactly means, whether that's going to be an area of effect damage deal, or whether you'll just be able to, much like Kolek Sunny, to just be able to summon down lightning. I'm not sure exactly how that one's going to play out, but interesting nonetheless. The Star Chamber Guardians, the Temple Guard, expert charge defense, do magical damage, very handy, and have Guardian ability as well, a bonus if they're guarding your Slan, Mage, Priest, or what have you. The Colossodon Hunters. These are Ripidactyl Riders, expert monster fighters, bonus versus large, handy to have, good to go up against Cav, or even Pegasus, or something like that. Pop Hopak's cohort. Cold One Spear Riders. These guys have the Primal Instinct trait and are gifted with Vanguard and Immune to Psychology. Handy, kind of an all-round useful guy there. The Legion of Chakwa, the Saurus Spears. You know, good to have Saurus Spears, but particularly ones who do extra sort of resistance against missile attacks to nearby friendly units. That's very handy. Just chuck them in the middle of your formation. Have them protect valuable units like Temple Guard around them. Very useful to have. The Umbral Tide, a Salamander hunting pack, one of the new units. Tireless, so they never lose vigor, which is great for a shooting unit as well as in fighting. And they're stealthy, which means they have Stalk, handy to get around the battlefield unnoticed. The cohort of Sotek, the red-crested skinks, these are meant to be the veterans. They have a temporary invulnerability, it looks like. I don't think we've seen something like this in the game before, but it's interesting. Temporary halts any hit point loss in battle, so if they're taking a charge or anything like that, they might be all going through a spell, just pop that and that will. I wonder how many uses they have of that. That sounds like, and how long that lasts. Sounds like it could potentially be OP, but potentially be just, you know, a nice little extra to have. And then we have the Pohawk Sentinels, the Pterodon Riders, and these guys have a dodge ability, which gives them 20% physical resistance, and their Rocks bombardment does sundering, which is helpful if you are going up against a unit that is particularly well armored. So you know what, fun ones to use, a little bit all round. No huge standouts for me in this list, but you know, good additions all round. Curious how a couple of things work, like the Thunderous one with the bolts of lightning and the red-crested skinks who are invulnerable for a certain amount of time. Not sure how those are both going to work, but curious to find out. So moving on from the units, let's have a look at the campaign mechanics. And these Lizardmen are described as having two campaign mechanics, but they're really just two aspects of the same mechanic, and that is the prophecy and sacrifice of Sotek. Now, the main idea behind these mechanics seem to be that as the Lizardmen armies of Sotek go and they fight different non-Lizardmen armies, they get to have a post-battle option of sacrificing the captives they get in battle. Now, this fills up a bar at the top of the meter, and then when you get to every tier of a bar, if you've seen under a number of mechanics like Chivalry for the Bretonnians, stuff like that, as you get to the end of the bar, you fill it up, you seem to be able to get a quest or you already qualify. So it seems like some will have unique missions, and then you go and do those missions, and those will grant you access to new forms of sacrifice. So you do the mission, and then you move on, and you get a new form of sacrifice. Now, it says when these are performed, they will give you unique banners, followers, powerful temporary effects, and regiments of renown. So now, it's interesting in that, do you have to do this as all Lizardmen, or is this, like the Skaven, going to give you access to a separate group of regiments of renown? Now, at the time of recording this, that hasn't really been clearly answered, because they weren't listed on the Steam page, marked like we had with the Skaven, having the extra regiments that are only accessible to Ikit Claw. Does Sotek have extra regiments of renown only available to him? If he does, we haven't seen those listed yet, but it is a possibility as they are here under his particular campaign mechanics and how it seems like the Prophet of Sotek faction will play the game, as opposed to a general update that we will see for the Lizardmen as a whole. That might be wrong, waiting for clarification on that one. Now, it seems like you're building up to when you get to the full sacrifice meter, you'll be able to do the ultimate sacrifice, and that is the ability to evoke Sotek, manifesting the Serpent God, where he can deal huge amounts of damage to enemies. Now, whether this is a permanent upgrade that the Prophet might get, or I don't know what form this will exactly take, but we will get to see the Serpent God Sotek make an appearance on the battlefield build, it looks like. So that looks fun. A lot of questions about the campaign of the Lizardmen one that I think need a bit of clarification, and if those have been added on a Reddit chat by staff members at this point, let me know. But at the time of this recording, there wasn't a clear answer on that I had. An interesting one, but a couple of questions remaining for them. That's really about it, ladies and gentlemen. That's what we're going to get for the DLC. If you'd like a bit of a background on these units, do check out my missing units from Total War Warhammer 2, and you'll be able to skip ahead straight to the Lizardmen section or the Skaven section and check out some of the background of the units mentioned here, and the background of some of the units we didn't actually get in this DLC, and we may get in the future, who knows, fingers crossed. Also, if you're interested in the lore of either Tehenuin, the Prophet of Sotek, or Ikit Claw, do check out my lore videos. They'll be popping up at some point over the course of this video or down in the description below. You'll be able to find those. Other than that, ladies and gentlemen, a huge thank you for sticking with me through this breakdown of the Prophet and the Warlock DLC, and I look forward to catching you all on the next one. Do look out for my breakdown of the updates to the free DLC coming either later today or tomorrow. But as always, as I said, thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Alright guys, bye.